Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for week 45 of the new Build Your Stash and Craft. Today we are going to make grit paste. I was asked to see if we could make this ourselves, and it is very easy to do. You can do it a few different ways. So I tried it out with a couple of things. Mod Podge. You can also use any kind of a regular glue, and like PVA glue. And then I also made it with the all-purpose caulk from the Dollar Tree. And I like the caulk better, but they both work well. So what I pretty much did was, and then we also just picked up some white decorative sand. If you do it with the white sand, then you can go ahead and color it any color that you want to. So we'll start out. I did them both the same, which was about equal parts of your glue to your sand. So, and I did not measure, but whoa, that's way too much sand. So we'll put in a little bit more so that we've got about half and half. Now, when you make things like this, a lot of times it is easier to, and then we're just going to mix it. It's easier to make what you think you're going to use versus making a jar of it. Now, if you get a airtight jar, you can make it ahead of time, but I find that sometimes when I try make things, even in an airtight jar, they don't necessarily hold that well, and it's so easy to just mix it up that quickly. I mean, even if you made it in an airtight jar, when you opened the jar, you'd still have to stir it. So, to me, it works just as well to go ahead and make it each time that you want to use it versus making up a whole bunch at one time. If you're going to use a whole bunch, make a whole bunch, but don't make it to save it. And then I'm going to grab a piece of... oops, ripped it, but that's all right. Just a piece of our cardstock to put it on. You can put it on anything that you're wanting to play with. So, excuse me. Whoops, or on anything that you're making. So we're just going to use our little spreader here, our spatula, and we are just going to smooth that onto whatever project we are working on. Now, the one thing you do want to also make sure that you do, because this is glue, and especially since the other is caulk, you do want to make sure that as soon as you're done, that you wipe them off. Don't wash this stuff down your sink, because you really don't want to wash glue down your sink, and you definitely don't want to wash caulk down your sink, but it wipes off really nicely just with a wet paper towel. So I'm just going to smooth that across my stencil, and then just lift that up. And there we go. We've got our grit paste. Now, with some of you, you may not like the sound of the grit paste because I'm just going to scrape this off. And as I scrape it off, I'm putting it back on my paper where I'm going to put some more, because then if anything comes through, it's just going to wind up on my paper. But yes, it does definitely have a very gritty sound to it. So, that is something that you may not like the sound of it, but so you can put it on through a stencil. You can just put it on with your palette knife, and then you just let it dry. Now, I've already got samples of this, and when I did the samples, it took about 10 minutes for it to dry kind of to the touch with the glue, and then I can't say it took 2 hours to dry, but when I came back 2 hours later, it was definitely dry. So you can also be, if you don't want it to be white, after this dries, you can paint it. But if you don't want to wait for it to dry and you want it to be colored right away, just put a little bit of paint, and that's just plain old acrylic paint, premium acrylic paint from the Dollar Tree out of our stash. And so you can just mix it in there until it is the color that you want it. And it does really take the color well. Some things will really fade your color back a lot. Now, this one had one little drip of paint in it, and I really do have a nice blue color there. So it really does take the color without fading it really badly. And if I put more paint in there, a little bit more paint in there, it will be even darker. So you can just take it with your paint, and again, we'll put it through this stencil. You might be able to see it much better with the color. And with the grit paste, and I'm going to kind of imagine even with the real grit paste, when you go to spread it out, if you want to really fill the circle, you need to kind of put it in there and fill the circle. You can't necessarily scrape it as much as you can. Well, it's working pretty good, but that's because it's also got the color in it, so the color is going through the dots. But if you scrape it off really, really flat and straight, it's going to pull a lot of that grit off with your palette knife because, you know, it's gritty. It is going to move whenever it catches something or whenever something catches it. So if you want it to be really tall and heavy, just kind of flatten it out as much as you want it. And then, but leave some on top. And when you lift it, it will make it even thicker. Now, I put so much, I had a little extra paint in there, so some of the paint got through my stencil because I kept going back and forth. So that's something that you have to remember whenever you're doing a stencil. The more you go back and forth, take that off of there. I'm just going to clean my stencil a little bit. That even looks nice and distressed there. And then we'll just put it on here. Nice and flat. Just spread it out. Now again, it's going to move. The grit's going to move with your palette knife. So if you want it to be very solid, you want to press lightly. If you want it to really kind of be here and there, the harder you press, the more it will move some of that so that it is not super solid on your paper. So that you have spots where there are the grit paste and spots where it goes down towards the paper. So that is what it looks like with the glue, with the Mod Podge. I'm going to just quick grab a paper towel here and get it wet. This is just water. I always keep a spray bottle of water usually in right by my art space because if I put it in a jar or something, I always wind up spilling it. I'm just going to wipe that off with a wet paper towel. It does clean up nicely. Whoops. Well, I'm making a mess, which I always do, don't I? All right, so let's look at what it's like with the caulk. So I'm going to set this aside for a second. Now with the caulk, I use just a flat palette. So just a Cool Whip jar or something. And then you're just going to, again, approximately equal parts of the caulk. And I always cut just a small tip on my caulk because sometimes if I want to do something on a project, you know, like if I just want to, like, let's say I want to just make a line that is, and you can even write with this if, you know, you got to kind of practice a little, work with it. But if you have a nice little tip, you know, you could even cursive write or whatever you want to do with it, let it dry, and it's paintable. So that's why I like to do just a little tip instead of cutting it. The further down you cut it, the wider your little bead of caulk will be. So we're going to do about equal parts of sand and caulk. See if I can get it a little closer this time. I'm just going to put a little pile of the sand next to my pile of caulk. And then we're just going to take a palette knife and mix it together. And they really do. They mix together very nicely. So there we go. Now this one, to me, it's a little smoother, which I didn't think that. I actually thought that it would not be smoother to spread, but it is. And that's, you know, that's kind of the way that I feel. I'm not sure if that's totally right or not, but so we're going to pick up this. And whenever you're spreading with a palette knife, it's easiest to put whatever your product is on the bottom of your palette knife because it's easier to hold it and spread that way. Because you're not going to be able to spread it this way. And if you put it on the top, you got to get it off and then use the bottom to move it around anyways. But see, this does not sound as gritty as the other. And it even doesn't quite feel as gritty. It is, but it's because of the caulk. And so again, if I want it to be puffed up, I'm going to just leave a little bit of it on the top of my stencil. And if it just feels like it's just too thick, let me just go ahead and see. Now here where I scraped it off, I scraped off all of the sand because the sand catches. So let's pick that up. Now if you feel that it's just a little bit too thick, too sticky, you could give it just a little spritz of water. I think we're going to try this because I haven't done it, so we'll see. But when I had put the paint with it, the paint made it a little smoother. And the water does too. Now you don't want to put a whole ton of water with it for dry time, and you don't want to take the sticky property out of the caulk. So we're just going I'm going to scrape this off. Yeah, see, it's very sticky. The caulk does get sticky quickly. So I'm going to put what I scraped off with the stuff that I put a little water in. And that just makes it a little smoother. So we'll put some of that on here flat. I'm going to take some of this off. So I'm going to put some on there because I want some to put some color with. So then we'll put just a little bit of paint. And I don't know what happened to my purple paint, but it just like doesn't even want to pour. It's so thick. But again, I just want a drip of paint. You don't need much. And it's not going to come out. So let's see. I'll just use a skewer. So just pick up a little bit of paint. Stick it on there. And mix it together. And it does do a really nice job of mixing. I wasn't positive if the grit, the sand, would stay white, and it doesn't. So that's a good thing. And if you want a little sparkle, you could put a little bit of the eyeshadow that we purchased, the mica eyeshadow. You put a little of that in there, and you may get some sparkle. With the acrylic paint, oh, now I've made a mess. I put the lid in there. We'll just put that on here. And sorry about the sound. I know that probably is going to really bother some of you. It's kind of like fingernails on the chalkboard. Alrighty, and then let's grab our stencil. Put a little bit of the color through here with the stencil. Or with the colored grit. Again, I'm going to leave it on top of those holes so when I pick it up, I've got some nice depth to it. Whoops, and then I'm going to scrape this off. And I'm going take what's left and spread it on here, because I can use this. Now I will use these little bits and pieces for collage or texture on an art piece that they may match. So I always usually try and have a place that I want to put it whenever if I'm going to have extra. Whether even if you like have just a junk journal that you just want to put some color into, put some texture on it, and then use that at different times for collage. That is a nice way to use up some of your extra paint or whatever that you have. Let's spread this out a little bit more. So there we go. Now we'll just have that for another time. So there we go. That is grit paste. And it really does. You really get the depth to it. And you get the grit feel to it. And here's my dry samples. So I put some on some origami paper because I wanted to see how flexible it was. So the purple again is the caulk, the blue is the glue, Mod Podge. And so if you bend it, it is not breaking. So it is nice and flexible. That's a good thing. We have a crease right here, but that's because we had a crease in the paper. But it's not even breaking there. So that's good. So the caulk does not break. The Mod Podge, depending on if it dries a whole lot more, because I mean, it's dry. It's been a couple hours, but the Mod Podge might, yep, see, like, look, got a little tiny bit of a crack there. So the Mod Podge, if you want to put it on something that's going to be flexible, the caulk may work better because you can bend that right over and it's not cracking. Even bending it nice and tight. But it looks like the Mod Podge is cracking a little bit. Now it's not really looking super cracked, but that is nice and definitely still flexible, especially the caulk. So I like the caulk the best. And then I wanted to see how much. Now some of this was just loose to start with, you know, pieces that just kind of fell off my stencil as I moved it. But let's see how. Okay, that is really pretty stuck. And see the kind of depth we've got with that. Little bits off the very edge can come off, but that is really pretty stuck. Let's go with the blue. So even with the paint in it, that is pretty stuck. So it does stick very well. That, you know, I was wondering if it would release. And again, I'm kind of almost sanding it with my fingernail, so little tiny bits that were just barely on the edge, those are coming off, but the actual part of it is not. So the only parts that are coming off are little bits that are just like at the edge. You can rub those off, but in the center, it's not coming at all. And with the paint in it, same thing. It's only coming where you can hit the edges, you can get a little bit off, but in the center, nothing. It's sticking very, very well. So that is grit paste. It works really well. And, you know, it's one of those things where, what do you use grit paste for? Texture. It has a feel to it. I'm a firm believer that art, no matter what art it is, whether you make a big painting or whatever, and this is me and it's my art that I'm talking about, but to me, art should be touched. I don't have a problem with people touching my art because it's the tactile feel to it that sometimes just makes it what it is. You know, now I would hope that their hands would be clean and not greasy, and, you know, but to me, a lot of the art that I do, I want it to be touched. I give it texture so that people will look at it and they're going to want to touch it. And And that's totally okay, because to me, I make it to be touched. I don't know, I feel like it's more personal if you can touch something than if you can just look at it on a wall. So, but there we go. There is our grit paste. Works really well both ways. So either way that you want to do it. So we may use some of this caulk again next week. Next week, we're going to use what we have. So, but this last week I said you could get this or the Mod Podge or both or whatever, you know. So if you didn't get the caulk, we may use this next week, but you won't have to have it to do what we're doing. We'll be doing a multitude of things. So, but yeah, so thank you very much for stopping by. If you get a chance, watch a commercial now and then. That does help. Tell your friends I'm back because I've been gone so long. Not that many people are watching my videos anymore. So I really would, you know, like, if you get a chance, click that bell so that you know when I put one up. I am hoping to really be back on a regular basis. I hope that nothing else comes up that sidetracks me like this summer did. And all of you that keep coming back and looking for me and checking on me, I really appreciate every single one of you. And so thank you very much for stopping by. If you have a request, please just let me know and I'll see what I can do. Thanks again, and I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.